Before we begin, if you're someone who enjoys stories where humanity isn't just part of the galaxy, but becomes the thing the galaxy never expected, then hit that subscribe button. Here, we share the best HFY sci-fi tales where Earth doesn't just survive. It changes everything. Now listen closely. The Calypso was Earth's crown jewel, a long-range exploration ship sent to chart the galaxy's outermost edge. It vanished 150 years ago without a trace. No wreckage, no distress signal. Just a final transmission barely decipherable. Crossing beyond. Something's changing. And then, silence. Until now. The ship has returned, but it's not the same. Not in shape, not in material, not in purpose. There is no crew, no lights, no damage, only one quiet signal echoing across deep space. We went beyond. Now we return, and whatever it brought back was never meant for this side of the stars. The Calypso was the pride of Earth's final expansion wave. Launched under the Terran Stellar Initiative, it was more than a ship. It was a symbol, a declaration that even after centuries of conflict, rebuilding, and endless cycles of collapse and rebirth, humanity still hadn't lost the one thing that made it dangerous: curiosity. The ship itself was a marvel, sleek, long-range, self-sustaining. Designed to journey farther than any human vessel had gone before, without the need to return. Its crew, scientists, explorers, thinkers, and engineers, hand-picked from across Earth and its colonies. Not for their combat prowess or rank, but for their questions. Their mission? To map the outer edge of the galaxy, to collect data beyond the frontier systems, to observe strange anomalies no one else dared approach, and maybe, to find what lay beyond the known stars. For 5 years, they sent back brilliant data, stellar, cartography, gravitational oddities, radiation patterns from forgotten dead zones, nothing too strange. Just enough to keep the scientific community buzzing. Until one day, they went quiet. It wasn't sudden. The last transmissions were distorted. Faint. They spoke in fragments, discussed shifts in local time, sensory hallucinations, gravitational readings that defied mathematics, and then came the final message. It arrived 5 days after all other communications had stopped. Encoded in low-bandwidth bursts, it bypassed every known relay network and was picked up by a forgotten outpost on the edge of Mars. There were no words, just the sound of breathing, and then a voice, soft, focused, calm. Crossing threshold. Systems changing, perception, folding, tell them, don't follow. Then static. No coordinates, no explanation, no answers. The Calypso vanished beyond the Sagittarius fringe, the absolute boundary of mapped space, an area marked by gravitational distortions, uncharted dark matter streams, and phenomena even the most advanced probes refused to analyze. For years, Earth tried to send missions. One ship made it close, it never came back. Eventually, the Calypso was marked as lost. The crew's names were engraved on Earth's orbital memory rings. A new exploration program was created, but with stricter limitations. No more long-range expeditions without return windows. No more uncharted jumps beyond the rim. And after a while, the memory of Calypso faded into the fabric of human history. A mystery. A cautionary tale. One of many sacrifices made in pursuit of knowledge. No one spoke of the final transmission anymore. Too unsettling. Too abstract. Too human. And the galaxy moved on. Until 150 years later, an old, deep space monitoring station picked up a whisper across the void. The same name. The same identifier. A signal carrying through lightless sectors, traveling without a known source of power. Calypso. And with it, a message. We have returned, but not as we were. It started as background noise. At first, the signal didn't even register as important, just a strange frequency bouncing between forgotten satellites, caught by a half-functioning relay drifting near the edge of neutral space. It pulsed once every 9 seconds. No language, No data packets, just a tone. Most AI filters dismissed, except one. A decommissioned Terran science station, Orbital Research Node 9, still maintained its old exploratory subroutines. Buried deep in its ancient programming was a code designed to recognize a very specific cadence, the emergency distress beacon of the Calypso. That station hadn't received a ping from that beacon in 150 years. Until now, it reactivated itself. That same day, Earth's Central Relay Authority received a flag transmission with one word, sent in clear, unbroken Terran standard. Calypso. No coordinates, no location stamp. The message repeated again exactly 63 seconds later. Then again. Then again, dozens of stations picked it up across different sectors, always faint, always constant. And then, something changed. A sensor buoy near the Talari dust fields, thousands of light years from Earth, detected a spatial disruption. A vessel emerged. It wasn't fast. It didn't exit warp space violently. There was no ripple, no flare. One moment, there was nothing. The next, there it was. Large, silent, cold. The ship's ID transponder was ancient, blinking a barely readable sequence burned into memory from a different era. It read, TSV Calypso 01, and every sensor aimed at it returned the same impossibility. It was intact, but wrong. The hull matched no known alloy. Its color shimmered, black, silver, and something else that couldn't quite be described. Its surface moved slightly, like water trapped under glass. It had no visible thrusters, no weapon ports, no windows, just a single glowing ring at its center, slowly pulsing, as if breathing. A Terran recon frigate was dispatched to intercept and visually confirm. The pilot's report was short, shaky. It's her. It's Calypso. But she's not ours anymore. As the frigate drew closer, instruments began to fail. Not violently. Not with warning. Just silence. The lights dimmed. Systems flickered. The ship's AI stuttered. And then came a voice. Not through comms. Not in space. Inside the pilot's mind. We are returned. Do not come closer. The frigate retreated. No damage. No aggression. But the crew never fully recovered. They spoke little. Slept poorly. One left a note before resigning. I saw the stars behind the stars. Back on Earth, panic spread behind closed doors. Commanders argued. Scientists debated. Should they hail it? Send a drone? Destroy it? But none of that mattered, because Calypso had already begun transmitting something new. Not just a name, but a pattern. A sequence of data pulses no one could decipher. They weren't coordinates, they weren't signals, they were waves. Complex, layered, harmonic. They seemed random, until one physicist overlaid the sequence on a simulation of early universe expansion. It matched. Every pulse mirrored the folds of space-time during the first seconds after the Big Bang. The ship wasn't just speaking, it was remembering, and no one, Terran or alien, had a clue what to do next. The first attempt to board Calypso was cautious. Too cautious, some thought. A team of Terran Special Entry engineers, escorted by a joint fleet task force, approached in a zero-contact pod. Their tools were cutting-edge, their armor sealed against any biological or temporal anomaly. This was humanity's best. It didn't matter, because nothing worked. No hatch, no seam, no panel. The Calypso had no visible entry points. Its surface was smooth, seamless, like liquid metal frozen mid-motion. It shimmered under light, reflecting stars in patterns that didn't match any known constellations. They tried plasma cutters, magnetic hull breachers, precision drills laced with nanite edges. Nothing touched it. The tools slid off like they were pressing against light itself. The commander called for remote probes. The first two simply lost signal as soon as they got within 10 meters of the hull. The third probe, specially hardened, managed to breach proximity and vanished. Not exploded. Not fried. Just gone. Mid-transmission. One frame it was there, moving forward. The next? Blackness. The feed returned 27 seconds later. The probe was now floating a full kilometer away, powered off, systems wiped clean. Its external casing was warped, but not damaged, as if the materials had forgotten what shape to hold. The fleet pulled back, then came the voice. Not from the ship, not over any frequency. It came through the minds of every human within range. Gentle, cold, familiar. There is no entry. We have no door. We do not need one. Some tried to respond, speaking aloud, whispering into comms, even thinking with intent. No reply came, but the voice returned hours later. We are what was left. We remember form, but not limit. We are not crew. We are memory, restructured. Those words triggered global psychological alerts. Earth's most advanced linguists were deployed to decode the subtext. Neural linguists suggested the voice was speaking in conceptual folds, ideas wrapped inside symbols that couldn't be fully expressed with linear words. Meanwhile, deep scans of the ship revealed something even more disturbing. The interior wasn't empty. There was movement, rhythmic, layered, not mechanical, not biological, like strands of organic matter woven through crystal frameworks, moving with no known power source. Life signs were detected, briefly, then lost, but the patterns didn't match any known human or alien neural activity. It wasn't just a new kind of life. It was life that had merged with the ship itself. Some researchers theorized the crew had fused with Calypso, not by choice, but by exposure to something beyond known physics. Others disagreed. They said the ship had become the crew, or more terrifying, that the crew had transcended, and the ship was now the body of their consciousness. Whatever the truth, one fact remained. Calypso wasn't a vessel anymore. It was a presence, and that presence had returned not for rescue, not for answers, but to deliver something no one was prepared to hear. We crossed the veil of space. We reached where thought becomes shape. Now we carry a message. The message was never spoken, but the stars around the ship began to shift. Their positions, unchanged for millennia, were subtly wrong, not because the stars moved, because perception had. And with that, Calypso began to hum, softly, like a cathedral remembering a song it had never sung aloud. The message arrived in fragments, not broadcast, not beamed. It appeared uninvited in the deepest data archives across Earth's core systems, slipped between layers of unrelated files, woven into code that hadn't been touched in over a century. It wasn't in words, it was in memories. Researchers called them threaded pulses, moments of experience recorded in waveform, sights, feelings, and time itself layered into quantum snapshots. And when reconstructed through Terran mind-link simulators, they painted a story. Not linear, not ordered, but real. The Calypso hadn't crashed. It hadn't been destroyed. It had crossed into something else. A region beyond mapped space. A borderless expanse where light bent the wrong way and causality frayed at the edges. The logs described it simply. The fold. The crew had reached it during a routine long-jump experiment. They'd found a tear in gravity itself, like a wrinkle in the vacuum, floating between dead stars. Curiosity pulled them in. What they encountered on the other side wasn't space, it wasn't even a place. It was thought, one log said. Unstructured, existing in layers, a region shaped by what you understood and reshaped by what you feared. The fold had no planets, no stars, but there were structures, glowing geometries that echoed, their own sensor readings back with modifications. Signals became reflections. Time became a suggestion. Days passed on the Calypso, then months, but not in sequence. Some crew members experienced a lifetime. Others felt only minutes. Their biology held. Their minds changed. We stopped asking where we were. A voice whispered in one recording. We started asking when we had become what we saw. Then came the transformations. It wasn't illness, it wasn't madness, it was integration. The ship began to shift, subtly at first. Materials restructured at the molecular level. Walls formed new passageways. The power core stopped drawing from fusion and instead seemed to grow its own energy. The crew watched it happen. Some feared it, others embraced it, and slowly, those who embraced it changed with it. No surgery, no fusion chambers, just adaptation. We became what we needed to be to survive. We shaped the ship, and the ship reshaped us. At a certain point, traditional communication broke down. Thoughts no longer traveled through mouths or screens. They flowed through surfaces. Simple touch passed emotions, memories, concepts, and eventually, something else made contact. Not a species, not a mind, a presence. It didn't speak. It reflected. It gave back thoughts the crew hadn't shared, memories they hadn't accessed in decades, regrets, triumphs. Every moment that made them human. Mirrored, echoed, understood. It had no form. But it taught them. Not in language, but in realization. And what it taught them, they could never unlearn. There is more beyond the end of space, the voice in the final data thread said. There is structure behind randomness, shape beyond decay. The universe is not expanding, it is unfolding. That was the last complete memory. After that, the fragments became strange. Diagrams made of sound, symbols shaped like thought itself, equations that rewrote basic physical laws, and one final echo. We are returning, but not to be found, to remind. They sent in the scientists next. Not soldiers, not commanders, not politicians. Just the quiet minds. The ones trained to look deeper when something doesn't make sense. The Calypso still allowed no entry. No hatch ever opened. No invitation came. But one morning, without warning, a small panel on the ship's underside fell open. It didn't slide. It didn't unlock. It simply peeled itself away like bark from a tree. Inside was an object, roughly the size of a human heart. Black, smooth. It gave off no heat, no signal, no light. And yet, every piece of equipment within 10 meters began operating differently. Quieter, faster, more efficient. They called it the core. The moment it was removed from the ship, the panel sealed itself again, like it had never been opened. And that was when things truly began to change. The core wasn't made of any known material. Its surface was impossible to scan, not because it was shielded, but because it actively resisted measurement. When one team tried to weigh it, they got 3 different values in 5 minutes. Theories formed. Some thought it wasn't an object at all, but a fixed point of potential. It responded to thought, not input commands, not speech, but pure intent. If you imagined heat, it became warm. If you imagined movement, it vibrated. If you imagined silence, it grew still. Within days, labs around Earth were reoriented just to study it. One engineer, working in isolation, focused on it for an entire hour, simply thinking about electrical current. The next day, his lab lights never needed power again. The core had altered the building's wiring. It had remembered. Another scientist placed it near a broken panel screen, fractured and dead for years. Within seconds, the cracks vanished. The glass restructured itself. The screen flickered to life. The core healed it. But no one could explain how. Theories turned to panic. If this was just one piece of the Calypso, what else had the ship brought back? Then came the second artifact, a sliver of metal, delivered in silence by an unmanned probe. It hovered in the air unaided. It responded to brain activity within a 10-meter radius. When someone with a strong visual imagination entered the room, the metal morphed, turning into curved shapes, tools, sometimes even letters. But not Terran letters, symbols no one recognized, but everyone instinctively understood. This is not technology, one physicist whispered. This is memory. Crystallized. Devices across the galaxy began reacting to the artifacts. Old, broken ships suddenly synced with them, Obsolete machines began functioning again, not with modern power, but with nothing at all. No fuel, no connections, just presence. Then came the report from a far-off moon colony. An engineer had been meditating near a replicated core. When he opened his eyes, there were notes on the wall. He hadn't written them. They were instructions, blueprints, new physics. Way to create engines that didn't move mass, but shifted position through intention. It wasn't science anymore. It was invitation. The Calypso hadn't just brought back objects. It had brought back the idea of change, not slow, not iterative, foundational, something that didn't ask permission, something that couldn't be sold or patented, something that made every government, every military fleet, every empire in the galaxy deeply afraid, because it meant the future wasn't something to reach. It was already here, waiting. The core was locked away, or at least they tried. But you can't contain something that doesn't obey your definition of space. Every time a containment team tried to move it to a secure vault, the core simply stopped being there, not teleported, not stolen, just gone, until it reappeared somewhere else, sometimes halfway across the planet, sometimes in the hands of a child. Once, it was found humming softly inside a locked drawer that had never been opened. It didn't follow orders. It followed intention. And for the governments of Earth and every major power watching from orbit, that was the real threat. Because now, possession meant nothing. Security meant nothing. Control meant nothing. The political response was swift and panicked. Fleets mobilized, treaties suspended. Earth received 12 simultaneous ultimatums from other civilizations. Surrender the ship, surrender the artifacts, or face isolation. Some threatened blockade. Others hinted at orbital denial strikes. Earth didn't respond, not because it was planning retaliation, because it had no idea how to respond. The Calypso still floated in deep orbit, unchanged. No weapons, no movement, just presence. And every attempt to scan it ended the same way. Data corrupted, sensors disabled, ships quietly redirected, sometimes without their crew's awareness. One captain later said, "I didn't turn the ship around, but when I looked out the viewport, Earth was behind me." Then came the final misstep. A small coalition of war-hardened species launched a stealth incursion. 12 ships equipped with antimatter penetrators, designed to disable the Calypso in one synchronized strike. They never got close. Not because they were destroyed, but because their ships failed to exist. Logs from nearby fleets confirmed the attack vessels disappeared mid-approach. No explosion, no signal, just absence, as if space had politely erased them from memory. A few hours later, a signal was received. Not from Earth, not from any known relay. It came from Calypso itself. Translated into every major language, the message was short. This is not a weapon. This is not conquest. This is a mirror. You will only lose what you bring. The meaning was unsettling. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a warning. It was a statement of law. A new kind of law. Not written by consensus, not enforced by military strength. A law based on resonance. Bring fear and you'd face your fear. Bring violence and you'd watch it fold in on you. Bring peace, and you might just hear the stars hum back. Earth called for calm. But the galaxy was already afraid, because no matter how hard they tried to explain it away, no one could answer. The one question every leader asked behind closed doors: what if Calypso didn't return to share power? What if it came to test how we'd react? The Calypso remained silent. It neither moved nor responded to any new contact. Its surface pulsed softly, calm, unchanging, like a sleeping heart echoing beneath a steel ocean. But something had begun, and it wasn't happening on the ship. It was happening everywhere else across Earth and her colonies, and her scientists started reporting strange anomalies, first dismissed as glitches, then as statistical errors. Equations completed themselves on screen before being finished. Mathematical proofs once thought unsolvable began appearing fully formed in unconnected research labs. Children, untrained, unschooled, began sketching diagrams in shapes no one had ever taught them. Not just stars or ships, but dimensional structures, forms that bent space inward. Machines made of loops instead of lines. Engineers started waking up with blueprints in their heads, designs for devices they'd never seen, written in languages they never learned. When asked how they knew what to build, most gave the same answer. I don't know, it just feels true. Meanwhile, old machinery across the galaxy began behaving differently. Dying satellites hummed back to life. Long dormant probes shifted course toward uncharted sectors. Ancient Terran AIs, once retired, decommissioned, rebooted themselves, muttering fragments of data logs from the Calypso's mission years before it vanished. And deep in Earth's oceans, a mining drone struck a strange mineral seam, one that hadn't been there last cycle. Inside it were perfectly formed crystalline strands. They vibrated when touched, with sound. Not mechanical, melodic. A song. One that hadn't been written by human hands, but was recognized instantly by a former crew member of Calypso's original sister ship. It was a lullaby, the same one their pilot used to hum in the dark 150 years ago. Impossible. And yet, real. Something was resonating. Not broadcasting, not transmitting, resonating. Like a memory being remembered by everything, by Earth, by machines, by people. Dreams shifted. Sleepwalkers across colonies whispered the same words without knowing one another. The fold remembers. The shape returns. We are more than flesh and time. Churches grew quiet. Universities overflowed. People stopped talking about what the core could do. They started asking what it meant. Not all understood it. Most were still afraid. But a small group, scattered, diverse, unconnected by borders or flags, began to write. They didn't organize. They aligned. They wrote down what came to them, shared notes, diagrams, feelings. And though they lived light years apart, their thoughts matched. As if they were recalling a dream humanity hadn't had yet, but soon would. And from the Calypso, still and silent, one final message emerged. Not through signal, not through code. It was found engraved in a grain of metal inside a child's handmade sculpture, discovered weeks after she said it just came to me. The engraving was deep, perfect, untouched by tools. It read, "What you unlock cannot be taken. What you remember cannot be controlled. You are awakening." Then, without sound, without warning, Calypso disappeared. No propulsion, no warp, flare, no gravitational ripple. It was simply gone, not destroyed, not hidden, removed from our sense of now. One moment it floated above Earth, a monument to mystery. The next, stars shone uninterrupted through the space it had occupied. The world braced for fallout, panic, unrest, retaliation. But none came, because something deeper had settled. People didn't riot. They paused, as if they'd witnessed the curtain draw back, just for a second. And that second had been enough. In its place, Calypso left a cube, small, silent, hovering motionless above the Pacific Trench. It resisted analysis. It defied gravity. It emitted a slow, steady pulse that synced with the heartbeat of every living creature nearby, not in a harmful way, not in a controlling way, just in rhythm. Those who stood near it described a strange calm, a presence like being remembered by something they hadn't yet become. Inside the cube, if it could be called inside, was a message, not stored on drives or screens, but written into the structure of the cube itself. Every molecule arranged to convey meaning. The message was simple. We saw beyond. We are coming back. Prepare to awaken. And then the cube dimmed. But it never left. It hovers. They're still untouched by wind, time, or tide. Waiting. Not for orders, Not for study, for recognition. Across the galaxy, changes continue. Scattered species begin sharing stories of shared dreams. Old rivalries fall quiet. Engineers start using shapes instead of measurements. Mathematicians build models that bend and fold like origami, in dimensions not yet charted. Some still fear it. Some try to ignore it. But none can deny it. Something changed when Calypso returned. Not with a weapon. Not with an ultimatum. But with a question so deep it echoed through machines, memories, and matter itself. And while the galaxy turns on, expanding and grinding as it always has, a few now watch the stars differently. Not looking for threats. Not even looking for life. They're listening for the next whisper from behind the veil. Because maybe the fold didn't just give Calypso something. Maybe it gave us back to ourselves.